And Jordan, if you come back in an hour, you can join us for lunch because I know people will still have questions for you, so you're welcome to stay for lunch. Todd's going to stay for lunch. Anybody else can stay for lunch. A few of our alums will stay here through lunch, so if you still have more questions, you can definitely ask them at that time. Janice Castro, she is our recorder. She's going to take photos. I feel like the need to jump in and photobomb, but no.
Please do.
So how much fun was that hearing from the alums? They're just wonderful people and doing some great things. And you could hear all the opportunities that they were availed themselves of while they were here at Medill, how their career has just blossomed and grown. I think one thing was quite clear throughout the discussion about being flexible and being open. So remember those things when you come here in the summer and the fall quarter. Want to put that out there real quick. Now is our faculty fireside without a fire, but they're going to just imagine a nice crisp fire just going on in front of them. No. So please welcome our faculty member, Karen Springen. It is our MC, and she will introduce the faculty, and you'll have a chance to ask questions. We do have a microphone in front. I will go grab that microphone when you open the floor for question answer. And I will come to you, Oprah Winfrey style, and take your question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. First of all, I just have to do a housekeeping item that Jack Doppel is unable to attend due to a family emergency. So we're going to focus our chat with questions on the faculty's industry experience and the outlook of the current industry. So just so you know, those are our official instructions. So look forward to hearing from you. Then I am just going to introduce our faculty. First, we have Charles Whitaker, who I think many of you met yesterday. He is very modest, so he probably didn't tell this to you, but he's officially our Helen Gurley Brown professor. He teaches magazine editing and writing. He has won just about every award under the sun. The one that always impresses teachers the most is that last year the Undergraduate Student Advisory Council gave him their annual Student's Choice Award. So he was like our teacher of the year last year. Okay, he works with the student newspaper, the Daily Northwestern. He advises them and the yearbook. So I could go on, but I can't take too much time. Beth Bennett is an award-winning on-air reporter and producer. She does documentaries. She did a 2011 documentary that was called Kindred, about a woman diagnosed with cervical cancer, and it won a Chicago Midwest Emmy. She's been on air in multiple cities, and she also has been a freelance producer for shows like Fox News Chicago, the CBS Early Show, and the NBC reality series Starting Over. And then Emily Withrow. Oh, by the way, I neglected to mention that all three of these faculty members have their MSJs from Medill. And Charles especially bleeds purple, gets bonus points because he went here undergrad also. Okay? And then full disclosure is my master's is from Columbia. But I'm now wearing purple all the way. Okay, and Emily Withrow teaches online publishing, multimedia, interactive storytelling, and before she was at Medill, she was an editor at the AV Club, which is the arts and entertainment arm of The Onion, which most of you are probably familiar with The Onion. And she's worked all over the place, including the AP, CBS, and so that's our distinguished panel. And I think you guys are such a great group with questions that I'm tempted to let you have the first question, or maybe I'll take one. I guess I'm going to ask the first one, and then I'm going to turn them all over to you guys, okay? I guess I'm going to start right away with one that's sort of a fun one, so hopefully you won't feel intimidated anymore when you make a mistake. I want to ask all of you about a mistake you made in journalism, maybe starting out, and how you recovered. It was actually a student question here, and I thought you guys are going to be too shy to ask it. I'll start out with one of mine. When I first started as a fact checker at Newsweek as a summer intern after I got my master's, and I was fact checking a story on memory. And I was fact checking the order of the planets. I should have fact checked the order of the planets properly, but I just checked all their spellings, and it didn't occur to me that the very famous science writer would have flip-flopped Neptune and Uranus. So I like merrily checked the spelling of everything, forgetting to check the order, and we got, back then it was old-fashioned handwritten or typed letters. We got flooded, I mean hundreds of letters from readers about how Newsweek had gotten the order of the planets wrong, and I was like, my career is over. I'm 23 years old and I'm through as a journalist, but I've survived, and I've made mistakes since then too, but.
The one that I'll own up to is when I was on what used to be called teaching newspaper here, our undergraduates go out and they work for newspapers, and back then you would spend some time 5 weeks doing reporting and 5 weeks doing editing, and it's my rotation on the copy desk, and when you're on the copy desk you also write headlines. And I was writing an election preview story, and it was about some candidate who was way ahead in the polls, and my headline in, boy, big type, it was like 48-point type, was so-and-so is a shoo-in blah, blah, blah race. And I spell shoo-in SHOE-IN, which is not how you spell shoo-in, for those of you who don't know. Shoo-in, it is not referred to footwear. It refers to shooing someone into something, and it's SHOO, which the executive editor of the paper kindly reminded everyone on the desk, who wrote this headline? How did this get hit? How did no one manage to catch this? It was a lesson well learned. I have never misspelled shoe-in since then, and I often catch that mistake all the time in my students' papers.
And I will say, you may have heard of the famous Medill F, which is one reason I bring this up, which is if you make a factual error or whatever, you don't get an F permanently, you get to do a rewrite and we average. But if you did something like that in your first quarter, that's what would happen. Yeah.
There's just so many to choose from.
What do you want to own up?
Yeah, it's like, exactly. Right when I left the MSJ program, I took my very first job in Traverse City, Michigan as a on-air reporter, but it was more than that. I was also a shooter, editor, driver, assignment desk editor. So it was kind of an all-inclusive job, and I did not really know how to shoot video when they hired me. And they did not, which now in the MSJ program, our students learn how to shoot video, from the ground up, but that wasn't like that when I came through here. And I didn't really be completely honest about the fact that I didn't really know much about the camera. And so I took the camera out my very first day that I was working for them, which was a Saturday, and I was the only reporter on shooting video that day. So I was all over town shooting video. And the back focus, if anyone knows about video cameras, the back focus was ajar. And so basically all the shots that were wide for the newscast were out of focus, and all the shots that were tight were in focus for a 30-minute newscast. And that was how I got my start in Traverse City. So, and I owned up to it, and they didn't care, because who is going to take that job other than me?
I'm honestly not perfect, but having a hard time coming up with a real gaffe that isn't buried so deep that I remember it. So one of the most sort of mortifying moments, at least, I had when I was reporting, I was working at in the Paris bureau for the Associated Press, and so doing all of my reporting then in French and then writing in English, which is a challenge in and of itself. And I had an assignment to write an obituary for the first time. I had actually done it in grad school at Medill as an exercise, but you don't actually have to call the relatives of dead people while you're in grad school, which is good, because it's not a pleasant experience. And so that I was assigned to they essentially gave me a phone book and said, find the relatives of this dead person and call them and get quotes about the death. I was like, oh, good. I'm so excited to do this. And so I started calling down the line and, are you a relative of so-and-so? No. And until I finally found someone, and I don't remember her name, but I said, may I speak to Caroline, please? And she was like, there was this long silence, and she said, I believe it's Madame, whatever, to you. And I had finally found the right person, but she refused to talk to me because I wasn't polite enough. And so I blew my opportunity to have this great source and get the right quote. And I had to go to my editor and own up and say, I'm too rude to be able to accomplish this assignment I have. So. I wooed her, but I called her by her first name, which is a huge no-no for any woman in her 80s in Paris, just in case you are, if you're ever in that situation.
So I want to give you guys the chance to ask questions. I have tons more if you're feeling shy.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of reasons why you guys are happy that you became journalists when you did, and not sort of as the industry is changing so much now. But I'm wondering if there's anything about the industry today and, you know, the path that we're all about to head out on that makes you a little bit envious of us. If there's anything about the industry that you wish you could get into now, and whether or why we should be excited about that.
Oh, go ahead, Emily.
I mean, so I've only been here for a couple years. So I actually have been working at this time of great disruption, and I thought it was thrilling. And I left to a full-time job to come here and to teach because I wanted to be part of the team that was thinking about the future and building people and great minds for the future, because we have this wonderful experimental space here where we can take the time to really think about disruptive innovations, disruptive technologies, how all of that will play out, and think forward to the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. What does this look like? What does content look like when it's appearing on such and such platform or such and such device? And so, I mean, one of the things I think is awesome about the industry right now is that you can go out and experiment. It's not that you necessarily have to pay your dues in the traditional way. You can go in with big ideas and want to take big risks, and if you can justify those risks and you're well informed and you can make a good argument about why you think this is a good risk to take, people will hire you and pay you to do those things and to take those risks. And so if you are a person who has big ideas, it's a fabulous time to be out there.
And yeah, that's what I was, to piggyback on that, I would say, not just a person who has big ideas, but big ideas and a strong skill set, which is what you're getting. Your big ideas are really important too. Ideas are the currency of the realm, but a strong skill set. So take Jordan, for example. In my era, that is not a job you get coming out of Medill. You are going to travel from a small local newspaper, and you're going to do a couple of other newspaper stints, and then you're going to have Jordan's job, maybe. But, and now we have students who are going from Medill straight to the Washington Post. That was not a path that happened 35 years ago when I graduated. You had to there was a path, and so you don't have as clear a ladder as we had, but you also don't have all the obstacles that we had either. Again, when I was coming out, again, you were told you start here, you work your way up little by little, you hope for your big break, and someone sees you, and maybe you get to the big time. You know, maybe you get to a big 5 paper, maybe you get into magazines. You guys have an opportunity now because of this disruption, and I say embrace the disruption. It is your friend to a certain extent. You have a time because of the disruption, because of the training that you're getting, to actually start in bigger places, better markets, really making a difference. Everyone assumes because of your demographic that you actually know what you're doing, even if you don't. They actually assume that you are technology babies, you are, you know, native to the technology. Everyone sort of wants that. They sort of want the intuition that you bring to this new technology that Luddites like me do not. Embrace that. That is your friend. It's a really exciting time for you. Again, if you take Jordan's advice, learn some coding, learn to sort of understand how learn to understand not entirely the back end, but get some sense of what undergirds the back end. Because I don't think you necessarily have to be a technician, but understand what the principles are underneath the technology, you will be well situated. I think it's a really exciting time for you.
Actually, I have two questions. First, sorry, squeezing them in. The first is, you're journalists, but you're also academics, and I'm wondering to what extent the theory of communications and information theory, and also the history of these trades and these disciplines and these discourses informs the curriculum and the teaching style. That's the first one.
So, I don't think of myself as an academic. I have colleagues who are. I actually do have colleagues who are academics, and I'm in a PhD program trying to learn to be an academic after 20 years of teaching. And so I personally have not approached the teaching of journalism theoretically. I actually tell people I'm an editor who works in a journalism school editing and nurturing young reporters. That's kind of what I think of my role as, more than as a... I don't bring a classical theoretical training to the discipline of teaching journalism. Though again, we do have colleagues who do. I do have, however, a strong appreciation for the history of media, because I do think you have to understand from whence we came in order to really teach and understand where we're going. There are some principles, I don't really call them theoretical either. Audience understanding is kind of the, I say, ontological, epistemological foundation for much of what we do, and I bring that to the table. We've always sort of used that to undergird our teaching, and that, I think is, again, I don't think that it really is really theoretical either. I think that's actually very practical, and we use that in very practical ways. But again, I do not consider myself an academic, really.
I would agree. And I teach mostly video classes, but I would say a lot of what we do is so practical, and the program is short, right? To get a master's degree in a year, it's not a lot of time. And I encourage our students who go through the video program to take classes with colleagues, the colleagues Charles referred to, and they do, which I think is very helpful when it comes to imagining possibilities. So thinking about where we came from, where we're headed, and what could be possible. But one of the things that I think is important, especially with video students or students interested in studying video, is that in 1 year's time, you leave with a portfolio of work that you can show to somebody. And so a lot of the work that we do, at least in my classes, I think is building to that, is trying to get into a place where in very short order you have a portfolio of work that you can show somebody so that they'll want to hire you. And that is, at least in video, kind of the calling card, the entree into the business.
Yeah, and in the field that I teach, I wouldn't necessarily borrow theory from communication necessarily, but so I do work sort of in the interactive space, specifically on narrative, and most of the work that's been done in narrative theory in an interactive environment or a nonlinear environment has actually been done on gaming. And so most of the theory that I bring into the classroom involves modeling narrative, what that looks like, sort of the different implications of a user-centered narrative or human-centered design and narrative. So we look at different narrative models and a bit of narrative theory, which we're borrowing from gaming, people who study virtual reality worlds and things like that, and then think about how that might translate to journalism, trying to identify we're very early in the interactive space in journalism compared with some other fields. And so in my classes, that's where I tend to bring it in, would be from other fields, and then translating, helping, getting the students to help translate that into what it would look like in journalism.
Thanks. Other one is, can we take languages alongside the curriculum as an elective? Is that encouraged? Does that happen?
You are free to take anything within the graduate school at Northwestern. Will you be able to? in the context of a really short and crammed program, it really depends upon your enterprise, ingenuity, and how you're able to. There are not many spaces for that to happen, but if that's an interest of yours, I think we should try to make that happen for you. So talk to us and see. One of the difficulties with the language classes is that they're offered in the College of Arts and Sciences. They tend to be 4 days a week. The timing is not really conducive to doing journalism. But again, we want, particularly as we increase our global focus, we want students to have more facility in language. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make that possible for you if that is what you want to do. And again, I would strongly encourage anyone to do that. So I would say to you, push us to make that a possibility and to figure out how that would happen. But the program, as it is structured, makes it somewhat difficult. But I don't think that should be a barrier to you doing it.
And I did it when I was here, so it is it is possible, yeah.
How did you do it?
I asked Janice Castro if I could, and then worked it out with my schedule, but I did when I was here.
What else are you guys curious about, or I'll go to my list? Yeah.
There's, some of us.
Oh,
Okay.
Hi. I've talked to several people who are quote-unquote in the industry already, and they've told me that getting a master's degree in journalism is a waste of my time and money. So what are your opinions on that point of view?
And you're here, which is great. Welcome. So I hear that a lot, and I hear it especially, I think, because in broadcast, there still is a path that people will follow, and so if they can get together a reel, they can generally get a first job. Excuse me. So I am very glad I came through the MSJ program, and I even heard that when I left the MSJ program. From my perspective, you are getting lots of tangibles in a very short period of time that are difficult to get in a newsroom unless you make the right connections immediately in a news environment. So in a newsroom, you need somebody to really take you under their wing. They have to be good at it. They have to be good at what they do. And they have to take you under their wing. And they have to be willing to fight for you. And then you have to be lucky. So the nice thing about coming through an MSJ program is in 1 year's time, you get people who are good at it, and who do it all the time. And you come out with this wonderful portfolio of work, this wonderful experience. But I also think, and this is for me in my career, but also what I see among my students, the intangible are the connections that you all are making with each other. And the fact that you're in a room with a bunch of people who are very smart and very ambitious and likely destined to succeed, and they know you and they like you and they're going to help you and you're going to help them. And so our alums pull each other through their careers in ways that constantly amazes me. I'll say, who's working, at this station? Oh, wow, we have 5 Medill alums there. Interesting. And they were all here at the same time. I wonder how that happened, And so I think the intangible is the cohort factor, the connections that you're making here. And then I'll say also now that I'm really a grown up and I'm at a place in my career where, I'm not on the streets every day anymore as a general assignment reporter. I did that for a very long time and I loved it. But, hitting the streets every day as a general assignment reporter, for me, I wanted something more. And having a master's degree has been extremely helpful in opening doors for me as I started thinking about kind of the next phase of my career.
It's also about where you can jump into the stream, right? If you are coming out with no experience, you can get an internship, maybe. if you have strong writing samples. But the thing, you are here for a full year. You get great training. I was here, and then within a couple of years I was a managing editor of 12 different websites across the U.S. And I don't think I was working with people who perhaps didn't come in with a master's degree, and you certainly can get places without one. I just think it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, back, again, not to continue sounding like a fossil, but back when, in the time when dinosaurs roamed, when I was coming out, there was training on the early rungs of industries. So again, you started in small markets, you started in a small paper, there are people who take you under their wing, they guide you along. And in this age of disruption, there isn't so much training anymore. It's hard to make those connections. And graduate school, in many ways, takes the place of that, or fills in some of those gaps that the industry no longer is taking care of. Also, and even though I did come out at a time when there was kind of a ladder and there was more training on the job, graduate school, and I had an undergraduate degree from this place, graduate school sort of burnished my passion for the thing I wanted to do. It was really where I found my place. I thought I wanted to do magazines, but graduate school was where I really found that it absolutely was what I loved and was passionate about. It allowed me to pursue it both in a more concentrated, but also in a deeper way than I was able to as an undergraduate. And I guess I have no regrets about having 2 degrees in journalism, though people will tell you that is the ultimate in redundancy. But I absolutely have no regrets about that.
I was just going to say real quickly, too, I mean, you are just immersing yourself in journalism, unless you want to try taking a language or whatever, where the undergrads, because most of us teach them, too, the undergrads are worrying about, like, their requirement to take statistics or their requirement to take, like, some sciences. You are just immersing yourself in this, and I think that's a really different experience.
I'm just curious to know how you found your first job in journalism and how you went about finding that job, and if you have any advice, or do you wish you did, like, went about going through that path differently in some way?
Oh, again, I came out so long ago. It's so different than it is now. But what isn't different is I found my first job. My first job was at the Miami Herald. And there was just a pipeline from Medill to the Miami Herald back then. And so I started at the Miami Herald with 5 other Medill students, including Christine Brennan, David Friedman, who's a very successful attorney now. But there were 5 other Medill people who started. So there was just this Medill pipeline, and you kind of went from Medill to the Miami Herald. So it was this. And that was just a well-worn path. And even now, actually, we still have a kind of connection to that newspaper. So, yeah, that's what sort of hasn't changed. It was kind of the Medill network that got me my first job.
And I would say people today, many people still start as interns, and as you've probably read in the news, the more and more the trend is to actually pay the interns. But I started as an intern after I got my MSJ. I started the day after I graduated at Newsweek, and then I'm the 24-year intern. I stayed for 24 years, and there still are quite a few students who do start as, often now it's called a fellowship. The Atlantic, for example, has a 1-year paid fellowship, and then if they do a fantastic job, they may end up staying on. So a lot of times now there are fellowships, internships, whatever, that are not that unlike what happened in our era. That said, I think it's rare to find someone who stays somewhere now for 24 years, but it does exist.
We have a career services office. You heard from Jim. We've talked about the Medill network. What you want to do while you're here also and you were probably told this as an undergraduate, I think it's just as important in graduate school, you don't want to leave here without making some connection to a faculty member who will kind of be your, paterfamilias and local parentis, whatever, to guide you through and sort of help you in your job search. That's really, really critical to make that connection, maintain that connection. I'm still in touch with students who graduate, Brittany Kaplan, who was here, Bethany Hubbard, students from well beyond that I'm still in touch with. So you want to make those connections, maintain those connections. Those people still call me and when they're about to make job changes, when they're trying to figure out, negotiate salary, we're still doing that. And that's an important part. That's an important part of your investment here also. You're investing in relationships and not just relationships with your colleagues, your classmates, and your instructors.
Yeah, and I chose to. So when I graduated, I applied for a lot of jobs, and actually was offered a few jobs, and then just decided that I wanted to do better, as strange as that sounds. But that I really wanted to work at the right publication for me, and that I didn't just want to take any reporting job that I could find. And so I worked as a freelancer. A freelance writer, a freelance copy editor, any sort of freelance work that I could find in Chicago. And unbeknownst to me at the time, what I was really doing is building a very strong network here that I had actually began freelancing while I was still a grad student here, continued that after I graduated, and eventually a publication that I was writing for called me and said, "We have a job opening. Would you like to apply?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And so that strategy, did work out for me, and I would encourage students to kind of wait it out and get a job that's right for you, and not just take whatever's out there.
And I think a lot of things, I just want to say one other thing, don't be scared of us. Hopefully no one thinks we're scary. I remember when I was in graduate school, and my advisor, you are all given an advisor, and then you can feel free to reach out to anyone who's not your official advisor. But my advisor was a man named Oz Elliott, who was the dean of Columbia Journalism School, and he'd been the editor-in-chief of Newsweek. And I was terrified of him, and I never went to see him except the one or two required times. And I guess what I'm really encouraging you to be is not scared of any of us. Go see your advisor all the time, or whatever teacher you make a connection with. Don't be scared. It's not like in the past. My students text me. It's so different.
Before we go to Jessica's question, you want to ask the question, Karen?
I mean, go ahead with their question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is about the program itself. So we've heard a lot about how Medill kind of tries to cater to individual students to your goals. I was wondering if you could talk about that, about how maybe you've mentored some students to help them kind of blur the lines between disciplines or, other things like that.
I think it's hard in our program not to customize it for each student because it is a pretty small program. And so we get to know our students really, really well. And in fact, we spend a lot of time with our students because of the way some of our classes are structured, where we're structuring it almost like a simulated newsroom experience. And so, I would like to say I'm close with all my students. I know their goals and what they'd like to get out of the program. But I think what's really satisfying is when that all comes together when they graduate. So I'm thinking in particular of a student I had recently who's just graduated from the program, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to go into television news or into web video and work for a newspaper or magazine. And she launched this huge job search. And we kind of talked throughout the whole process. And one of the things that I loved about working with her is that she freaked out a lot. And so it would be like, I'd get a text, and it'd be 6 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm going into the Washington Post today, and I don't know how it's going to go down." And so, it was kind of fun to just sort of hold her hand through that process. I don't know if I had a lot of even good things to tell her except to just be there for her. And then in the end, she came out with, multiple job offers. I think she's accepting at the Washington Post. The last we talked, that was where her head was. And so for me, it's kind of fun because I get the thrill of going through that process. But
and I'm sure it's like this for you guys, that I probably have 2 or 3 emails a day about this kind of stuff, or sitting down with students. You know, it's all the time. The advising and the mentoring is a major part of the job here, because our program is very small, it's very intense, we get to know people really well, and then we really want our students to succeed. And you mentioned it, but I get, and I'm sure you guys do too, so many emails 5 years later, I just took this job, or I'm doing this now, or I'm going to be in Chicago, can I come by, which is great.
I do want to say I don't want us to overstate customization, because I don't want people thinking, oh, I'm going to come here and I'm going to take this, this, and this, and this whenever I want to, and in whatever sequence I want, because there is a sequence, and there is a learning ladder, and so there is some broccoli that we are going to make you eat. Sometimes you know, that you may not want to eat necessarily. So, but within that, we do try to meet your needs, and we try to make the program elastic enough. But I don't want people to go away from here and then come back saying, you know, but you promised me that I was going to do blah, 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 whenever I wanted to, and I want to do it now, because, you know, it's just manage expectations a little bit coming in. But again, within that, we try to work with you to help you meet whatever those goals are within a very loose framework, a framework of classes, but a framework that we try to help you tailor to your needs. I just want to put that out there, because I don't want anyone seeing me later saying, you lied to me, you told me I was going to do blah, 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 blah. So, having said that, yes, we do try to maintain really strong relationships. I think it's the strength of this school is the faculty relationships with students. Having said that, also, the other caveat that I will offer is I think it is incumbent on you to come to us. Not that, you know, not to come to us, not to say, but reach out. As Karen said, don't be afraid to reach out. You will not be rebuffed by any professor here to whom you reach out. I can say that with a great deal of certainty. We are a very friendly group. We will, again, work very hard for you and help you in whatever way we can, but we don't hunt you down for that. we do make ourselves available. And again, start early. You know, you get your faculty advisor. There's some points at which you have to talk to your faculty advisor. You know, we make you talk to us before registration, and you know, and you'll deal a lot with the student life office with Kristen and those folks. But again, avail yourselves of the professors, of the instructors. Get to know them early. Come to the program's fast, and I know it's hard to try to make time, but it really will be to your benefit if you try to make as much time as possible to get to know and to get to really get your instructors to know you in and outside of the classroom.
And just so you know, too, we're pretty collegial. So often one of us will say, you know, why don't you go see, like, Charles about this? I mean, so it's very, just like, I think it was Jordan or whoever said that it's not, like, I don't think it's very competitive among you guys. It's very collegial with us. Or I feel like they're my friends, and I will often say, I think that's something, Beth could help you with that.
Absolutely, and I was going to say the same thing. We have a very diverse faculty in terms of expertise, and so it is likely that what you're interested in, we do have a faculty member that shares same interests or has worked in that particular part of the field, and we all know each other well, and so we do. Probably my most hands-on advising is not actually with people who are necessarily assigned as my advisees, but people with whom I share interests and experience, and so I'm often sent people to talk about, and you know, I've never said no to anyone who's requested a meeting with me. So.
Hi, I'm Bethel. I look forward to meeting all of you on an individual level. It's fortunate enough for my question that all of you are either minorities or women, and I happen to be both. So I was wondering if that had ever come as a challenge, or if you faced any adversity in the workplace, and how you've overcome that, and what advice you have for us, or me in particular, coming from that background. Thank you.
Why don't you give
No, sure, absolutely. And I work in a technical space. I'm a programmer. There are not many of us women out there who are programmers, and that I spend a lot more time thinking about how to get more women into programming and into that space and working at the intersection of journalism and technology, because even there are few women. And so I tend to focus more of my energy on tapping into women who are interested in this. And I have a great opportunity here at Medill because we have a great number of talented women who do kind of get that technical bug in the beginning of the program, and I love mentoring those students. And I think part of it is cultural, and that is shifting right now. Which is a good thing. There's been a lot of publicity. A good friend of mine, Tasneem Raja, who works at Mother Jones, has been particularly vocal. She's an Indian woman, and has really been pushing against the bro-grammar culture. So I do think things are shifting, but part of it is being that person and being loud about it, and being really talented at it helps as well. And so building those skills and entering the space, proving yourself, and really just having the chops to run along anybody that's out there, and then appearing at conferences, being on panels, showing your face, and making it a safer space for other women who want to enter that field.
Yeah, I find that the affinity/identity organizations have been really important, both in terms of helping me network and find other people of color who are, and sadly, one of the offshoots of the digital disruption is that we've actually slid backwards in terms of numbers of people of color in the industries. And the organizations like the National Association of Black Journalists, National Association of Hispanic Journalists have been working very hard to try to address and redress that sliding backwards. And they have been wonderful organizations in terms of, again, galvanizing people, providing a forum to discuss that, still waving the flag for diversity. Similarly, there are women's organizations, JAWS, which stands for what? Journalism?
Journalism Women's Symposium.
Thank you, Women's Symposium. There are women's organizations also that have been wonderful support networks. And so I would, again, strongly encourage you to get involved. There is a identity organization for almost anything you are interested in whatever demographic you can come up with, there will be something, or interest, there is something for you. I would strongly encourage you to get involved in those. Those are actually wonderful supports and resources for people of color.
I also put in the plug for LGBT. There are also national group for that, and one of our faculty members, Doug Foster, is very active in that. He and I worked on a LGBT reporting project before the 2012 election that we're very proud of. If anyone wants to look for the Medill Equal Media Project. So I think there's a lot of things you have to seek out like that and learn which professors might be able to put you in touch with those people.
One quick thing I would say in terms of television, I at least worry about two things. One, I worry about very fine, very well-established women journalists as they age, being led off the air, which I think is a real shame, and I worry about it in that industry. The other thing I worry about sometimes is among women in newsrooms not stepping up to take management roles. And so among my students, I really hope that that we feel emboldened to take on management roles, and then hopefully help keep and retain aging, very fine women journalists from aging off the air.
Thank you. I'm going to let the faculty close out. So this is your last conversation with this wonderful group of admitted students. What is it?
Conversation today. We, of
last
course,
one
this
today.
conversation will be continuing when they all
We'll be
enroll.
talking about in June and September when you come back here for summer and fall quarter. But I'm going to let you close out, and what is it that you want them to know? What is it, the last parting word you want to share with this group of students? It can be anything and all things.
We're going to start with them.
All right. This is my non-official Medill advice. I would say do what frightens you. That's sort of what I brought into the program. I wanted to do what I thought would be most challenging for my time and money when I was here. And I think that it really served me well because I got out of my comfort zone. I reported on issues and in places that I had never spent much time thinking about before, and came out with a set of skills that I really felt like I could apply to anything because I had really pushed myself and pushed this program to become someone new almost while I was here. And so that would be my advice is, I think that in the spirit of risk-taking and sort of looking at where we are, that you have to prepare yourself to step into places that you don't know very well and try to do so as confidently as you can. And I would start with that when you get here and really take advantage of the faculty, take advantage of the curriculum, and do something that scares you a little bit.
We're giving advice? Is that, I don't know.
I went with advice.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what's helpful. So first of all, I hope we'll see you here soon again. And I think for someone who's interested in journalism, it's important to consume a lot of journalism and figure out what you like and what you can do with your interests. I think it's useful to consider your expertise. What are you good at and what do you know? So what do you bring to the table? And then what can you learn so that you can bring more to the table? And then finally, the thing that I thought was most difficult about being a journalist and coming through the program was talking to people I don't know and talking to people in very uncomfortable moments. It was very uncomfortable as a journalist to have to call somebody, Madame, can we talk about this? And I think even though it's uncomfortable, the sooner you kind of get used to living in that and kind of embrace it, I actually think it has lots of benefits through life, not just journalism, being able to talk to people when it's a little uncomfortable and get their story and help them to trust you as a storyteller, I think is useful not just as a journalist, but kind of throughout your life. So it takes some people some time when they get here to feel comfortable with that. But I would say, live in that space for a few minutes and kind of get used to it because it's okay. And I think we all feel uncomfortable when you have to talk to people we don't know.
It's giving us the hook. Exactly. I would say embrace the disruption. It is a wonderful time to be a journalist. Ignore the naysayers who tell you that it's a horrible field and it's dying and there are no jobs. They actually told me that too when I entered journalism school. So this is an ongoing refrain. Ignore it. This is a wonderful time. It's a very exciting time for smart, industrious people who are excited by the new technology, but who also love language and love talking to people, who are curious and just, I want to be a journalist just because I'm nosy and I want to know what's happening with there. Like, what's that person doing? What are they doing? What's underneath that? Embrace that. Those are wonderful qualities to have. There are very few, I can't think of another business where every part of your education will be important to you. I've never had any part of my education that I have not used in my career as a journalist. There are times when I actually wish I paid more attention in math class or biology class when I was covering the implant of an artificial heart. And I was like, oh no, what does that aortic valve do again? It's a business that again allows you to use all of your education. It is an industry that allows you to meet and talk to fascinating people doing wonderful things. Where else do you get a chance to do that on a regular basis? Or to just communicate with people, even if you're not doing journalism, but just using those skills. Because the fascinating and interesting people may be the people in the company that you're doing a newsletter for, and you're sort of just figuring out how they do their jobs better and communicating that to other people in the company. Or it may be you're working on the PR person at a sports team, and you're sort of getting their message out. There are lots of ways that you can use the skills here, use the talents here in a lot of different fields and a lot of different arenas. Embrace that, love that, you'll be held in good stead. You will find that there's no time when I actually think, oh my God, I made a mistake doing this journalism thing. It has been a wonderful ride.
And I would say have fire in the belly. I had a journalism teacher who said that it's a fire in the belly profession, a passion profession. And then, like Charles said, just be so curious and ask for it, and maybe you'll get it. I've always said, I want to do that story. I've been in the Obama's house. I've been backstage with Aerosmith when they were eating watermelon and pea pods. Whatever you want. Be curious and don't be too shy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Some quick house cleaning stuff. We're going to close in a little bit. Lunch will be out in the lobby area. I do ask, before you all leave after lunch, if you see me around, please stop by and see me before that you leave. I would like to say goodbye to you and thank you before you leave out for the day. But as a group, just in case I miss anyone, I want to thank you. I want to sincerely thank you for being here with us for the past day and a half. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate you getting involved in meeting and talking to everyone so you can figure out your place here at Medill. For our close, though, our official close, I would like to introduce to you all again our Associate Dean, Craig LeMay.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a closer. How about it? When I asked Julie what I was supposed to talk about, she said about 10 minutes. Don't mess it up, and remember that they want to go to lunch. So I will take about 10 minutes of your time. I teach communications law here. My background is in free expression policy. And as a consequence of doing that for many years, I'm a very, very direct person. I say exactly what I think, which I think is a professional virtue. In my personal life, it hasn't worked out at all, but professionally, it's a good thing. Yesterday, when I was at the morning session, when I was, you met Mei-Ling Hopgood, I was sitting in the back of the room with her, listening to all the presentations, as I just did here with my colleagues, and the student presentations. And Mei-Ling didn't go here, and neither did I. And we turned to each other and said, man, I wish I could go here, because it's a really cool place in all kinds of ways. And the most obvious are the ones you've seen. We have an amazing group of faculty. I became associate dean about 5 or 6 months ago, partly for personal reasons. I spent the last several years raising my boys to responsible manhood, and I wanted to get involved in my school in a different way and get to know all the faculty, many of whom, when I came here, I was the young one. Not anymore, but we have a lot of really sharp young faculty who do all kinds of really amazing things, and I wanted to get to know them and see what they do. People like Emily, people like Craig Duff, whom you met, and other people who are just at the cutting edge of something. Rich Gordon, I talk to Rich Gordon all the time, and I understand about half of what he tells me, but people here do truly amazing stuff. And the faculty here really are a collegial group. They are invested in our students. And that's one of the things I've always liked and admired about this place. I like my colleagues. If this was a newsroom, it would be one of the most functional newsrooms you ever worked in. People really look out for you. And I personally find one of the most rewarding things about this place, my students. I still teach just because I need 3 hours a week of something other than administration, something genuinely interesting where I get to talk to people who are precociously smart and know things I don't, and that would be you. I noticed yesterday when, I can't remember who it was, but one of the faculty asked how many of you changed the world. And of course, a great journalism school thinks about that. We have a public service mission of a kind, and journalism always has. It's a particularly funny business. If you look at how economists look at the business of journalism, they would tell you that only an irrational person would do it for all kinds of theoretical reasons. That's what makes it so charming to me. That's what I've always loved about it. That's why I'm not a lawyer. I went to law school for about 2 months and decided I wasn't going to do this. I needed something that was a little more freeing. But I come from that kind of public service background, and I was thinking about this last week. I was in Guatemala. I've worked for years with a little paper in Guatemala City called El Periodico, which launched in 1996, the year that Guatemala ended about 50 years of civil war. It's really the paper of record in that country. It's an investigative paper in a region that's full of pretty bad tabloids. And it was founded by a guy named Jose Ruben Zamora, who is a civil engineer, not a journalist, and one of these noblesse oblige guys, Spanish, who mortgaged his family's coffee fortune on starting this little newspaper, dedicated the idea that Guatemala could actually be a successful democracy. And El Periodico came to international attention in 2003 when a guy named Efren Rios Montt ran for president. And General Montt had been president of the country for about 18 months in 82 and 83. He came to power in a coup. And in 2003, he ran for president despite a constitutional provision that says that ex-military officers can't run for office. And he did anyway. And make a long story short, to make sure he'd get his way, he brought to Guatemala City in July of 2003 any number of goons, masked goons with AKs and Hilux pickup trucks who went tooling around town shooting people, and including in particular journalists. And none of the tabloids covered this. They covered the violence in the streets, of course, but they didn't cover the constitutional crisis. That was left for El Periodico to do. And after about 10 days of this, and of this coverage, Jose Ruben was home one night, and there's a ring at the outer gate, and the maid answers the ring. Who is it? Someone from the state prosecutor's office bringing some papers for Jose Ruben. So she let them in. And 12 masked men came to the door, and they took Jose Ruben and stripped him naked and had him kneel on the tile floor in his own home and zip-tied his hands behind his back and brought his children in front of him and put a gun in his ear and kept clicking it for 2 hours. And then before they left, they had his 3 children, 11, 9, and 7, lie down on the floor in front of him. They put a bed sheet over them, and they jumped up and down on them. And he could hear their bones breaking and their screams. And then they told him, "You stop this journalism thing or we're going to come back and kill you and your family." And the next day he said, "I'm a journalist now. This is what I do." And he went back to work. And partly as a result of what he did, last year Guatemala was the first country ever to successfully prosecute a former military dictator for the crime of genocide, ever. And the paper's still there. But what's different now is that back then we were a struggling little paper trying to do a good thing. Now we got to keep the lights on. The problem with great journalism, this is what economists will tell you, is that it doesn't pay for itself. It never has. Keeping the lights on is a whole different thing. Only the Lord gets by and the Lord's pay. All the rest of us have to hustle. And so one of the things we've been doing over the last 10 years is trying to figure out how to pay the bills, how to pay for that great journalism. So we do a sports magazine now. We're the country's largest internet service provider. We have a music publishing business. We have a book publishing business. And what El Periodico needs more than ever is people with skills that I don't have. And so when I think of the world of journalism and what it is and what it provides, Charles is right. And you've heard this. It's the best time ever to enter this field, no matter what you're interested in. And if you didn't raise your hand yesterday because you don't want to save the world, I'm with you sometimes, honestly. There's all kinds of things you can do with a journalism degree, including careers that we didn't used to think of as journalism. You can make your own. One of the coolest former students I still stay in touch with, a guy named Mike Trudell, was a student here. He graduated about, 13, 14 years ago. He's a broadcast guy. And traditionally in the broadcast business, the way you move is you go to a small market and you climb your way up. So to move up, you move along. Mike had a different idea. He had been a soccer player here, and he wanted to do sports. And Medill didn't offer a sports program then, but I talked to him the other day, and he said what he learned here made him a great sports reporter. But he didn't want to do it in a conventional way. So first he went to the Baltimore Ravens and said, this is 2003, and said, "You know what? You need a media presence. I'm your guy." And they said, "Really? Sure. Okay." And he did. And he built the online presence for the Baltimore Ravens. Then he went and did it for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And now he's doing it for the LA Lakers. If you go to the Lakers website, the whole media presence there is Mike Trudell. He does play-by-play. He does the player blogs. He's a journalist. He's not a PR guy. He would tell you that. I'm a journalist, but I work in a completely different kind of news organization. And if you like sports, one of the things that's really changed about the world is that all sports organizations are now media firms. So I don't care if it's the Big Ten or the Lakers or the Baltimore Orioles. You're a media firm now. And so there are journalism jobs there that we didn't used to think of as journalism jobs. And this is a great place to train for them, because this is a place that belongs to the entrepreneurial learner, as the future does, in fact. One of the things that you learn if you spend any time in Silicon Valley is that the old model of knowledge is completely gone. For 400 years, knowledge developed along a slow S-curve, and you had time for genres to develop and canons to develop. Not anymore. Skills have a half-life of 5 or 6 years. Genres don't develop. Canons certainly don't. One of the things you learn, I think, in a really great way here at Medill, the reason I would come here, is we make you entrepreneurial learners. When you talk about fire in the belly, that's what that's about. It's about the person who's smart enough to figure out the future and figure out the skills they need to be constantly learning. And the other thing that I think Medill does really well is it provides context, judgment. Because in a world where knowledge stocks don't last, judgment is everything. Here you are, of course, at one of the world's great research universities. If you can avail yourself of the opportunities here, it's like no place else. You know you're a great research university when the football team is actively deciding whether or not they're going to play for you. And of course, we're a Division I school. And the other thing that's true, I think, about Medill is that in some respects, we're not even a journalism school. We're a news organization. If you look at the area of social justice, we own it. We own it. Between the Innocence Project, on the one hand, the social justice work that Louise told you about yesterday, the Chicago Bureau. If you're talking about juvenile justice issues in the United States, the Chicago Bureau is your first stop. We do journalism. We just don't talk about it. This is not a journalism and mass comm school. You learn by doing here. We get you out the door. And we support you in every way we can think of doing it. It really is a tremendous place. As associate dean, I spend my days walking the halls, precinct work. This is Chicago. I do precinct work. And I talk to my faculty colleagues. I talk to the staff. I talk to the students. I talk to alums. And that network, you, the students, the faculty, the alumni, and the staff, is a really potent, powerful force. I've been rewarded by that alone in doing this job. But the key to the whole thing is you. It's the students. And so every fall when I get to meet a new group of students, it's the best day of the quarter for me. Find out who you are, why you're here, what drives you. Maybe it is sports. Maybe you want to do social justice. Maybe you're one of those coding people. Whatever you are, there's a place for you here, and we're always innovating. This is a place where I spend my days talking with people about how to make this a better place. That's half my day every day, and I really admire my faculty colleagues for that. They are extraordinary people, as you are. So my last job, I believe, before sending you off to lunch, is to remind you that May 1st, next week, I guess, is the decision deadline. Do I have that right? Okay, thank you. So I hope you decide for us. And if you have any questions between now and then, this discussion isn't over. Please call any of us, me, Charles. Sorry, Charles, I just volunteered you. But any of us, and I'm sure we'd be delighted to talk with you, as we will when you get here. This is a conversation that Medill is. It goes on for the rest of your life. It's a much more active place than what happens just here in these halls. So, it's lunchtime. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you. Anybody lose keys?